And this one says, "Hi, I am more and more interested in an instructional design leadership track. Do you have any suggested reading or referrals for this, specifically for instructional designers looking to move into an instructional design manager role at some point, or educational manager, leader, etc.? I'm wondering what hiring managers look for in instructional designers' careers and resumes in terms of length of time with their employer. Does having a variety of experience appeal, or is loyalty to a company or to a particular industry better? I'm sure this has a lot to do with the instructional designer wants out of a career, but I'm trying to look at it from the other way around, which is extremely smart. My organization has no option for me to move upward into management as the leadership positions are as the leadership positions above me require a master's in nursing to apply. Thank you in advance." So, would you like me to start this one as
I want you to start
started
this
the last one?
because
Let's keep
this
going
is,
back and
yeah,
forth.
yeah, go
All
ahead.
right, so this one is extremely interesting one, as also somebody who was trying very hard to work his way up from an instructional designer to a senior instructional designer. I had definitely been where you are before, so I can give you a brain dump about some suggestions and things to do. But the first thing, I did not want to overlook this comment, because depending upon, I don't know where you work or your background. I'm assuming, because you said nursing, that I'm assuming with something for like medical hospital related is my best guess. I would hope so. But the thing that I want to actually ask you about first is, can you first apply to the job and then get the master's afterwards by using either professional development funding or with tuition assistance? Now, nursing I know is very specific, and maybe there's a law requirement to something that says, no, you must do X before Y, which I understand. But also, I have seen many colleagues and peers within higher education who have gone for roles. They got the job as far as for being a dean or something, very high inside of the organization. And as soon as they got the position, their superiors were like, "Great, you're going back to school." And it was like an immediate, you don't have a choice. Like, you have to get a higher graduate level type of a degree. So, is that an option? Have you explored that? Have you actually asked? Have you asked if there are any types of circumstances where you can work around this kind of thing? Like, that would be kind of my first thing, just to be able to understand. Not the end of the world if we have to work around this, but if that's one barrier that we can just simply remove by asking a question to HR, the hiring manager, whoever, and all of a sudden you find out that there's another way, and it's going to save you a lot of time, energy, and effort if we can figure this out. So that's kind of step one. So now let's go on to step two. Just maybe that, this is going to be a thing. What do we do? So thinking about it from a senior instructional designer standpoint is really different compared to being an instructional designer. What I've found the most is that I am not in the weeds anymore. So I am not diving on into the content, into the curriculum. I am not actually going through and creating the course outcomes or the objectives, or going through with the content, or actually making the assignments or whatnot. Now it's more of, I am overseeing the development of those things. So I would say it comes down to managing projects and then leading people. That is what a senior instructional designer actually does. So in order for you to make your case, let's say, about why you should become a senior instructional designer at potentially your employer or for another employer, I want you to write down all the accomplishments and all of the amazing projects that you have done so far, because it is so easy to forget, move on, and then to keep on going from there. And then all of a sudden you have a conversation with someone and they're like, "Didn't you just build and launch that brand new product last year? Didn't you host this massive training that 300 people took? Didn't you do this pilot program?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, I did do that thing. It's gone because I'm moving on to the next project." So definitely write everything down from all your accomplishments. Then thinking more about volunteering and mentoring anyone else within the organization. If there are junior instructional designers, junior members of the team, trying to show that leadership initiative is definitely going to help, as well as is being able to lead trainings for other higher level people. So in my case, thinking about it more from faculty, staff, and other folks is one thing. For your case, working at a hospital, maybe for nurses, doctors, administration, whoever, I'm not sure who's actually going to fit the bill for what it is that you're doing, but leading those trainings for other people and showing that cross collaboration from different departments and trying to be able to do that to get your name out there is really only going to help. And then at the end of all of that, then you can actually pitch out your case about why you deserve to be able to have a better title, promotion, a raise. Because, of course, now at this point in time, too, you're able to learn more, to network more, to see more different types of processes that could be improved upon, see some pitfalls that perhaps potentially you can fix. You can take on more initiatives, you can do way more. And then that, that you're on track, where unfortunately you're doing a ton of stuff that doesn't fall into your radar, where all of a sudden you're like, I have all these new responsibilities and I'm leading this and I'm doing this. And you're like, I'm not getting paid more for doing all these things, but it's getting there. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, because then when you go and talk with your supervisor afterwards, you're like, look at all these things that I did. Here's all this amazing, awesome stuff. And if they still say, no, you need this nursing degree, you're like, okay, well, now I'm going to go to another organization and say, look at all these amazing things I did. So no matter what, you're building out your portfolio, your resume, you're building out all these different types of new opportunities that you're able to talk about inside of the interviews as you go through that process. And that's going to really help you to become a senior, a senior instructional designer compared to just an instructional designer. And I know that was really long. Indy, that makes sense as you're listening to me.
No, it made perfect sense from the perspective of an instructional designer who is not a senior instructional designer. It makes perfect sense. And actually, believe it or not, I have a research article that backs up everything that you just said.
Oh, hey, that's nice.
So yes, that works out really well. So in the online journal of distance learning administration, there is an article that I happen to find. It was in spring 2020, volume 23, issue 1, Instructional Design Leadership and Management Competencies Job Description Analysis. So what the authors did was they went and looked at the major organizations that hired instructional designers and looked for positions that were listed as leadership positions. And they did the Higher Ed Jobs, Chronicle of Higher Education, Indeed, Educase, and the Association of Educational Communication and Technologies. So from there, they found 30 articles that had leadership, and they did a textual analysis, qualitative analysis, going through and looking at the different themes. And what they discovered completely aligns with what you said. The top areas that leaders in instructional design, what these job postings were looking for, could be grouped under communication, being able basically to communicate with people, which is essential. Instructional design, so having that skill. General leadership and management, and technical skills. There were other skills I found out, and the article is very detailed. It even gives quotes from various articles of what they were talking about experience in the area of experience. And I noticed the question talks specifically about experience. That's really going to vary, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But in particular, doing the networking that Luke talked about, doing the instructional design, and the other things outside of instructional design. But importantly, showing that you can lead and manage people. That is just essential for any higher level or leadership position in instructional design. And of course, the technical skills, and we touched upon that earlier when we were talking about AI. Be abreast of the field, the theories. That's wonderful, but know the technologies that are being used to make instructional design easier, faster, and more economical. Those are things that they will look for in leaders and in individuals who are looking for those leadership positions, because they will be working closely with administration. And so when you make that jump and you make that step, you're really going to be able to need to know how to communicate with people above you and below you. And as instructional designers, sometimes we really just don't talk to administration as much. Get the experience, sit down, see if you can get invited to meetings, have those, walk in the room and be the person that sits in the corner and just listens. Find out what the vibe is, find out what is going on in the organization that you could make a difference from an instructional design perspective. And all of those things will be valuable. And that all aligned exactly with what you were saying about leadership and networking and things like that. The last thing I wanted to mention that was not only in this article, but it really has to do with the fact that Luke was talking about how you can look to see whether or not you could negotiate or find a way to gain the qualifications Will they pay for it? Will they sponsor you to go to school, etc.? Also ask yourself, am I really, is it, do I have to stay in this area? Because instructional designers are so numerous. You can go into private practice if you want. You can work for a company. You can work for an educational institution. Is it the location that you like? Is it the working in medical field that you enjoy? Find out what it is that you enjoy, and then see if there are any similar areas that don't have the qualifications or the need to have higher education. But I will note, I also want to, speaking about higher education, in this article, out of the 30 articles, 18 of them required a master's degree. So that higher education, you may find it everywhere. But find out if that is really where you want to stay. And if not, if you're willing to take a leap or take a jump or even take a chance, see if there's another area in which you could do instructional design and be very comfortable in that area that may not be in nursing or may not be working in the medical field or in the area that you are. So based on the research and just my own personal experience of asking those questions and then taking that chance, I think that with Luke's network, I love the way you talked about the networking. I love the way you talked about taking on the more responsibilities and having those difficult conversations or those uncomfortable conversations with people you may not be comfortable with, mentoring, all of that together. I think that that will definitely help you transition into what you want to do.
And you touched upon something that I didn't say, so thank you for saying it too, was how you communicate with different people above you and below you.
Yes.
That's so different. It's so different to try to flip that switch to figure out, how do I communicate with this person effectively as opposed to whoever? And I can give you an example too, which happened to me recently as far as for speaking with, I went from this happened back to back, which was like mind blowing, that giving a presentation to a group of PhD instructional design students. I was in this meeting. So of course my learning nerd flag was flying. I was saying every acronym, going into every learning technique. Like, I was just going for it because these people can talk shop with me. They know what I'm kind of talking about. And then I had a conversation with someone directly afterwards. And the question was, why do people use videos in courses? And I was like, because I was just like, I had to stop. And I was like, okay, like, how do I answer this without being like, so anyway, it made me think to a second where it's just like, okay, it's literally an honest question. Answer that in an appropriate way and not just go right into like, have you never used YouTube ever for anything ever? Has there never been a video that has helped you in any way, shape, or form? It was just completely discounting a form of media entirely. I'm like, videos are like blah. We just use books. I'm like, okay, well, okay. But anyway, so communication of different people, different levels, and knowing how to temper those expectations and how to word things correctly 100% is going to help you with trying to sell idea to somebody who is much higher than you but doesn't need the nitty-gritty instructional design facts, as opposed to somebody else who does need that. They need the tiny details. They need to be in the weeds, and you have to go and introduce that content more because they don't care about the financial implications. They just care about, how are we going to finish module 1 on time?
Exactly.
Very different conversations. So
very different. And just to reinforce what you're saying, it's that question about video. He actually had the courage to ask it. He or she, I don't know who actually asked it. A lot of people don't know. Okay, when you're in a field, you think everybody knows what you know. And we forget that you're in a room full of people with all different backgrounds and all different experiences. There is research to back up why we use video in courses. But the first thing I think when I get a question like that is, why are you asking me that question? Because I'm thinking everyone knows the same. That is the power of being able to communicate at different levels. Because when you move up into, and Luke, you know this more than anyone, when you move up into that senior instructional design role, you not only deal with, in your case, administration, faculty, and then other instructional designers, you also deal with students. So they're not going to be abreast of the most recent theories. They may want to know, why am I watching this video when I can read a book? So it is imperative that you are able to communicate those things at different levels to different people, and be able to explain the why. Because I will tell you, when you give a price tag to a course to someone in administration, they're going to look at the price tag and then wonder why you're using this technique. Why are you
Absolutely.
using it? Because we did,
Absolutely.
because we've always done it.
Yeah.
Be able to justify it with that research. And that is the power of just really taking that look and saying, what, yeah, who do I want to have these conversations with? You may want to have those conversations with people in a completely different area. And this is your opportunity to really branch out and see where it is that you would like to take your next step. So there's a world out there. You can go anywhere you want, and you can do instructional design because it's needed everywhere. And so it's just so many opportunities. So
I love it. I love it. The last thing I'll mention, because they did ask about books with leadership, which, so I'll give you two, just in case if you, even though all that information is going to be more helpful for you in real time things, but in case you're like, but no, folks, I want a book. Like, okay, understand. I'll give you two. I'll give you one that's Audible in case if you're walking, you're listening to podcasts on the go. HBR has a book on Audible called HBR Manager's Handbook, The 17 Skills Leaders Need to Stand Out. I'm currently listening to that one. Would definitely recommend for you to do the same. Also, for an educational leadership book that I read during my, as I'm looking at my ground trying to find it, during my doctoral program that I loved because it gave me so many different types of frameworks and real life examples about using leadership within an educational context that was really helpful for me to kind of understand my move and transition over into this type of space was the Josie Bass Reader on Educational Leadership by Grogan and Fullen. It's a huge book. Massively thick book. So you'll know it when you see it. It's like, oh yeah, it's like 500 pages. Like, yeah, it is. But luckily, you could just pick one chapter and say, like, I want to learn about that framework. It's not like it's not a sequence. You need to read something in chronological order kind of thing. Pick and choose your own adventure there. But highly recommend that one. So those are
good
the two
books.
books. And of
Good
course,
books.
the article, Indy, that you just mentioned, I will 100% link down below because that sounds like that will help out this person too.
Yes.